Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video.
So, I've been married for a year and I still think my husband was the best thing that happened in my life. But recent developments have really left me disappointed in him and have completely changed my view of him. I'm 25, female, and about a month ago I came back from hospital after giving birth to a beautiful girl. Throughout my pregnancy, my husband took care of me, and just by looking how he physically treated me, no one would have been able to guess that he actually took my mother in law's side when she said that I'm too young to be a mother. It wasn't like that from the start. But gradually, my mother in law built toward convincing me that I really can't afford to be a mother at my current age. She was sweet about the whole argument and made me feel like it was all for my good. The first time I heard her say that, I was honestly offended, and I left the house to stay with my parents because her words mentally affected me. I overthink a lot, and it's really hard for me to categorize situations into simple or complicated situations. So the thought of my mother in law wanting me to lose the baby was really hard to bear. And I was thinking all kinds of things, from her hating me and wanting me out of her son's life to her being too greedy and wanting everything that I have. I was scared that if I refused to give up on the baby, she would do something to me, and so I stayed with my parents. My mother knew right away something was really wrong and asked me about it. When I told her what was going on in my mind, she said that I'm overthinking again, and it's not like that. She told me that instead of jumping to conclusions and falling into another episode of depression, I should talk to my mother in law and my husband and tell them my own point of view about the whole thing. Hearing her put it that way, I decided to talk to my mother in law and my husband. When we finally had a conversation, my mother in law said that she doesn't want me to get an abortion. She just wanted me to consider my options hard enough before deciding on keeping the baby. With my history of struggling with mental health, she was concerned that at my age, it might be too much for me to care for another human being. My husband also said the same thing. He was thinking about how I'll manage motherhood with my studies and my part time job. Even if I quit my job, there's a high chance I might not be able to cope with it all. Their concern sounded genuine, so I told them I'll think about it. And I did think about it all. I know better than anyone how much I struggled in my early 20s with depression and suicidal thoughts. I had to be institutionalized for a few months to come out of it. I dropped out of college and started abusing drugs. Every day was a struggle, and it took a lot of help from others for me to finally find a stable ground. After coming home from the help center, I took 2 more years off where I completely focused on my mental health and did what made me happy. That's when I met my husband, and he became the best part of my life. We got married after dating for 3 years, and last year I decided I wanted to go back to college to finish my degree. He was incredibly supportive and let me do what I wanted. I talked to my then boss at the department store about leaving my permanent position and working as a full time employer, and thankfully, he helped me out. Honestly, I didn't even need to work at all with how much my husband made, but I did it because working helped me keep my sanity. My pregnancy was accidental, and when we found out, we decided to not abort the baby. But seeing how hard it was for me in the past, I thought about how I'll manage another human. But I also knew I've come a long way and decided to keep the baby after giving birth. When I told mother in law about it, she took the news better than I expected. And later I found out it was because she didn't give up on changing my mind. For the rest of my pregnancy period, both my husband and my mother in law conditioned me into believing that I really wasn't ready. They would suddenly bring up a situation and tell me how I'll manage it, and in my overly hormonal state, I would end up being incredibly frustrated. At that time, I didn't realize that it was slow manipulation, but now that I look back at those times, it's painfully clear what it was. So that's how I ended up finally giving up my baby after birth. When I told my mother about it, she said I should do whatever I think is the best for that baby and me, and that she'll support me. I didn't tell her about what mother in law and husband were doing. In my mind, the whole idea was mine, and I truly believed 25 is too early an age for someone like me to have a baby. My mother in law has told me that my baby would go to an adoption house, and they have already found a married couple who wants to adopt her. What I didn't know was that the couple was my own sister in law and her husband. It was too hard for me to meet the adoptive parents while I was literally giving birth and mourning giving up my daughter. But my husband assured me they are great people and I let him handle everything. But a few days ago, I was visiting my mother in law's house and I saw my sister in law there with my daughter. I was devastated and furious at them because my sister in law has a past history of being aggressive. She hasn't been able to have a baby, and even after IVF, she wasn't able to get pregnant. Her husband actually has a criminal record, and even after all that, my husband and my mother in law decided to give my baby to them. It was like a slap in my face. I couldn't bear the fact of my daughter growing up among people like them. So I called my lawyer and asked him to look into the legality of this adoption, and guess what? They didn't go through any adoption agency. My husband gave them full parental rights and made me believe that we were giving our daughter to an adoption home through which these people adopted her. Well, I've asked my lawyer to file for emergency custody now. I'm also going to find out a way in which the adoption can be nullified. Does doing this make me an a-hole? There's definitely a chance I'm still overthinking things, but to let go of my daughter to people who have criminal history and anger issues, I definitely could be a better mom than them. I had a huge fight with my husband today. I didn't tell him about how I found out he gave away my daughter to his sister in case he tries to do something that would make it impossible for me to get my daughter back. Instead, he found out through my sister in law when the emergency custody was accepted in my ex parte hearing. I made my case by using the abusive environment of my sister in law's home and their toxic marriage as an example for how unhealthy that home would be for my daughter. After witnessing them almost getting divorced twice already, there's no guarantee that their relationship would last more than a few years. Thankfully, the judge saw the situation as it was and let the state file a case for emergency custody. I'll be receiving my daughter tomorrow, and I'm planning to leave for my parents' house as soon as she comes home. As for my husband, our fight was huge, and it's clear that we can't reach any mutual decisions right now. He's more offended by the fact that I didn't tell him about filing charges than by the fact that I found out about his lie. More importantly, he completely refused to acknowledge what he did wrong and kept saying how our daughter would still be in our family even if she stays with my sister in law. Like, yeah, she'll be a damaged child suffering with a dozen issues, but sure, at least she'll be in the family. How can he even say that? I'm so mad right now that if it wasn't for my daughter not being here, I would have walked out the door right now. I've been living with my mom for 2 weeks now, and everything that has happened so far and is still happening has started to show its sign on my mental health. My mom and dad's support is the only thing that's keeping me going, and I wish my husband would come to his senses soon and understand how what I did was the right thing here. Meanwhile, I feel like I will physically crumble any second. My daughter keeps waking up in the middle of the night, and I've chosen to feed her naturally instead of using a bottle, so it's definitely taken a toll on me. I wouldn't let my mom take care of her at night because I'm already being a burden on them by staying here. My husband calls me almost daily, and it's like I go through the same conversation every evening without making any progress. He's upset because both mother in law and sister in law are giving him a hard time and blaming him for my actions when he had no idea about it. I've made up my mind and I'm going to keep the baby whether he's in or out. And we keep arguing about the same old things. I don't know how else I could make him see that I am a mother capable of giving my daughter a life she deserves, as long as he'll support me. If he chooses to walk out, then maybe I'll have a harder time, but I'll still dedicate everything I have to my daughter. And I don't think motherhood is about anything more than doing your best. I came back home to my husband last week. We've been talking about what's best for our daughter a lot. And of course, it was hard for any one of us to completely get what they want. So both of us had to compromise as much as possible. My husband made me promise that I'll keep going for monthly sessions to a psych until our daughter turns 5. He said that even if I felt completely in control, I'll have to do it to give him mental assurance that I'm taking care of myself. He said, if we're going to do this, we'll have to do it right. My condition was that I didn't want my mother in law or my sister in law to be in our lives anymore. What they all did, including my husband, was horrible. And if he wasn't the father, I would have cut him off too. So we've cut all contact with them. I don't know how we'll figure out parenting with his job and my college, but we'll have to. And I can just pray that everything turns out to be okay. YTA, you know that you're not ready to have a child, and yet you want to raise a kid. I'm not saying give that child to your sister in law, but at least find her a home where she can actually have the emotional support that she'll need to have a healthy life. NTA, this is just your point of view. But if I base it off of exactly what you said, then taking your child and leaving that family as mental manipulation and conditioning someone is really dangerous. And if they did it once, you can bet they'll do it again. Throwaway here. My boyfriend and I, both 30s, has made comments here and there about my family to his mom that are basically small lies in order to make her feel better. For e.g., explicitly or implicitly, that my siblings and I aren't close, that my family isn't close, that I don't like seeing my family, etc., all of which are very untrue. He does this because I don't visit his family very often, so he basically explains that I'm not close, comfortable with any family, but also because it makes her sad, jealous to hear about any other family get togethers. Won't get too deep into it, but she's not an easy person to like, which is why I don't visit often. And in laws have very strained to estranged relations with literally every other family member, including their own children. So, mother in law is both difficult but desperate for family relations. I've told him to stop, and he stopped the blatant lies like that I'm not close to my siblings, but he'll still answer her questions for e.g. about Thanksgiving plans. Her family is just going to have a small, quiet dinner, and then we all leave early. Basically, his family's Thanksgiving. So after that particular Thanksgiving comment, I corrected him. What are you talking about? There's going to be 20 people and 2 dogs running around like usual, and you're probably going to drink with the guys and play basketball with the kids all day. She definitely got wounded, sad eyes after I said it. My boyfriend wasn't upset but explained that he felt it was a harmless white lie that hurt no one until it was exposed and now hurts her. I know it's petty, but it feels like my family's reputation was being besmirched. WITAH for correcting my partner's lie about my family to his mom and in so doing, hurting her feelings. Edited to add. Thank you all for your comments, which really varied, but were honestly helpful nonetheless. It actually helped me see things more clearly and articulate thoughts better. I have no idea what happens next time, but a few things. I didn't use narcissist for mother in law because I didn't want to sound flippant, but that is the general consensus amongst family. My boyfriend doesn't really like his mother but feels sorry for her. She always asks, we never mention my family. My boyfriend believes she asks because she wants to confirm that we don't see my family often, like them more. Obviously, this is a problem, and he, and begrudgingly I, had been placating her because it's just easier. My intention was never to rub it in her face, but I see that I probably went too far. I didn't have to include the number of people or that he has fun. The comments helped me understand why I felt besmirched. The lies weren't just that my family isn't close, I could have lived with that, but there were implications that we didn't even like each other. It did denigrate my relationship with them. A lot of people question my boyfriend's overall integrity, which is totally fair, but honestly, I trust he's not lying in other regards. Some commenters with similar relationships seem to understand the dynamic and reasons why my boyfriend did it, which still didn't make it right. But he does have good boundaries with her normally and is in therapy. Mother in law knows she needs therapy. Not going to happen for reasons I can't explain. Boyfriend drew boundary around not being her therapist years ago. E.g. equals example. Thank you all again. I don't get these YTA comments at all. You don't just get very estranged relationships with everyone when there's literally nothing wrong, especially their own children. I feel like the husband has always jumped through many hoops to appease mother in law's behavior his whole life, whilst it isn't even his burden to do so. I feel like he's so stuck in his way of life, he can't even see it's time for mother in law to grow up and take a hard look into the mirror about what kind of person she really is. But my guess is mother in law would rather die. NTA, and in my book, you never will be. Downvote me to hell, but I've seen enough narcissistic people to not recognize one when I see it. NTA, here's why. You didn't go up to her and say, yeah, we're going to have so much fun with my amazing family. Sorry, you suck. Your boyfriend kept lying to her about your family after you had spoken to him and told him to stop. Sure, maybe you didn't have to say all of what you said, but I get your frustration and desire to make him stop. Saying something in front of her was probably the only way. I, 23 male, married my wife, 23 female, let's call her Kay, last year, and it was recently our 1 year anniversary. I met Kay when we were in sixth grade. We became friends and then started dating our freshman year of high school. I proposed to her right before COVID. Kay and my mother, 46 female, have never had a good relationship, and if I'm being honest, she wasn't the best mother to me, but I still love her. Now, getting to the problem, me and Kay went to my parents' house for our 1 year anniversary because my sister was also visiting, and this would be a chance for me to meet my nephew for the first time. We left for my parents' house about 5 days before our anniversary. First night, no issues. Second night, no issues. Third night is when I realized Kay was starting to get annoyed with my mother's remarks to her. The day of our anniversary, we went out for the day and had a good time. When we got back to my parents, my sister and Kay were in the kitchen and having a glass of wine and talking. It's about 8 o'clock and we all start to settle down. Nephew is asleep, so the adults decided to just sit in the back around the fire pit and talk. My sister is engaged and is starting to look for dresses, so she pops the question and asks Kay if she can see a pic of her dress because she needs inspiration. This is where things got bad. As Kay goes to grab her phone to show her the pictures, my mom says, "Oh no, sister's name. You don't want to dress like hers. You look like an absolute slut." As my sister and I went to say something, Kay just looks at my mom and, in the calmest voice I've ever heard, says, "Oh, please, you and your saggy boobs can kiss my ass." Both me and my sister looked at each other and busted out laughing. My dad was wide eyed and looked like he was holding in a laugh as well. My mother just silently got up and walked inside the house. Dad followed her. Next morning, we say goodbye to my sister and get on the road back home. When we get home, I'm receiving multiple calls and texts from multiple family members regarding this situation. And then late that night, my mom calls me and tells me I'm a total a-hole for laughing at what Kay said and not standing up for her. Now she's pissed at me and refuses to answer my text or calls. So am I the a-hole? Just to clarify, I do not just let my mother talk shit about my wife. Yes, I stand up for my wife, and yes, my wife has stood up for herself. Me and my wife will have a serious conversation about what is happening, and I'm totally on her side with this. Me and Kay have talked it over, and we are going to limit contact with my mom and set major boundaries with her. NTA, the only a-hole here is your mom. That was an absolute rude comment to make, and she deserved the response she got from your wife and the laughter from you and your sister. It seems like your wife can handle her own, but I think you need to have a serious conversation with your mom about how she treats your wife. NTA, but you will be one if you try to chastise your wife in any way for putting your mother in her place. Your mother is the one who owes the apology here, and you, not your wife, need to set some boundaries for how your mom treats your wife. It is past time someone held mommy accountable for her actions.